Harvard Divinity School.
Uses and abuses of power in alternative spiritualities. Implications for spiritual care of patients and communities. April 28, 2023.
Thank you so much for that introduction. It's so lovely to be here and to see everyone. It's wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my notes here. So in preparation for the Uses and Abuses of Power in Alternative Spiritualities conference, I focused on Foucault's concept of the pastorate and of biopower in the paper that I delivered earlier today. So you'll find that in the conference's recordings. But in the process of that, I was particularly compelled by the way a heuristic. Thank you. I'll just continue. Thank you so much, Mark, for checking in there. So the paper that I delivered earlier today, you'll find in the recordings, and in the process of preparing for that, the heuristic of pastoral biopower informed my own experience as a survivor of spiritual communities where leaders abused their power, who abused their power, were also health practitioners. Unfortunately, these wounds in my life reverberate in my family and in my community. And the harm that those spaces have caused me has left a number of wounds that provoked a search for meaning for me in many ways. And as an artist, that was one of the tools that I had at my disposal. I won't talk too much about the autoethnographic examination of the abuse of biopower for just the sake of my own safety. I will, however, by means of self-positioning, state that as a queer person, I've been subjected to harassment, scapegoating, and shaming as a way to control my body in the context of spiritual community. And as a person with a neurological developmental disability, namely autism, I'm especially vulnerable and have been subjected to several severe financial and emotional abuse. As a refugee, my experience of the state is strange and detached from a grounded and embodied intergenerational community building. As a person of faith, all of these factors together have made me especially susceptible to manipulation through shared spiritual identity. Hence my motivation to better delineate the abuses of spiritual power for myself and perhaps others. A call to concern for the abuses of power in spiritual communities may not be top of mind or priority to many people in the context of so many other urgencies and the realities of our time, like climate change, the rise of extremism. But let's not forget that Christianity at one time was an alternative spiritual community removed from the state. And yet here we are in a country that can be considered a Christian state, where the silencing of genocide committed against Indigenous people still continuously occurs. The prospect of abuses of power escalating in spiritual communities during the power shifts currently underway in our society weighs heavily on my mind as we delve into this subject. Speaking from experience, I'm particularly concerned for people with disabilities who struggle with consent and for whom spiritual abuse is both easier to perpetrate against and easier to cover up. I would be remiss not to contextualize this conversation in the rapid change of the Earth's climate. It's with great anticipatory grief that I consider how many considerable shifts in power my communities will struggle through when the climate crisis aggravates further. It's in the foresight of that reshuffling that I fear significant abuses of power will likely take place in what Naomi Klein refers to as sacrifice zones, hence the title of this piece. These sacrifice zones are considered areas of aggravated inequality as a cause of extraction capitalism, where people and communities are simply left behind. It is by keeping these spaces in mind that I invite you to consider the experience of this piece called Song Within a Sacrifice Zone, which is a poetic abstraction that I've created, grappling with how words fail to express grief for injustice within the hyperobject of the climate crisis. This 5-minute video installation will be repeated 3 times with a period of silence in between each screening. And another beat of silence will be added at its conclusion. At that time, I'll be happy to take any questions in person or over Zoom.
Om Nayam Edelreit en el teatro La Quecus Ein le reit Ein reit En le sayamegos En le esque megas eielesk elemegesquea enleser yequemesca eielegesque namexca alaram kie neie alaraskayam unian kanta aluyargani ni inyelargani Niagalargan in ala yargase konin ayolgun Om Yanam Alrade Danangase Njanja Nayes Njam Nayes Nkaneyeis Nie Anyalike Niangali Nungiali Njangangebe Pantalikse Mpakalipsi Iekeli Jakabik Antakapi Ontur na Onjugabjani Om Nayam Edelreit en el teatro La Quecus en le right el rey en le sayamegos en le esque megas eielesc elemegesquea en le se yequemesca eielegesque namexca alaram kie neie alaraskaiam unian canta aluyargani ni inyelargani nie nie niagalargan in alayargase konin ayolgun Om Yanam Alrade Danangase Njanja Naies Njam Naies Nkaneyeis Nie Anyalike Niangali Nungiali Njangangebe Pantalikse Mpakalipsi Iekeli Jakabik Antakapi Ontur Na Onjugabjani Om Nayam Edelreit en el teatro La Quecus en le right el reyet en le sayamegos en le esque megas eielesc elemegesquea en le ser yequemesca eielegesque namexca alaram kie neie alaraskaiam unian kanta aluyargani ni inyelargani nie niagalargan alayargase gonin ayolgun Om Yanam Alrade Danangase Njanja Nayes Njam Nayes Nkaneyeis Nie Anyalike Niangali Nungiali Njangangebe Pantalixse Mpakalipsi Iekeli Jakabik Antakapi Ontur na Onjugabjani
Sponsored by the Program for the Evolution of Spirituality.
Copyright 2023, the President and Fellows of Harvard College.